that the many protesters that are going up into the court today can see that they've got a huge amount of support here outside. And I think the key thing for us today, our message today, is that we want to show solidarity with those protesters, that we think that those protesters were absolutely right to take a stand last year against the attacks on education. They were absolutely right to take part in the mass demonstrations against cuts in education. They were absolutely right to take part in the mass occupation of Millbank that's inspired people up and down the country that we can take this government on and we can win. So my message today to the protesters inside the court is that we will not let you stand alone. But also our message is to the court that the wrong people today are in the dock. That it should not be Alfie Meadows who was whacked over the head with a baton so hard he had to undergo brain surgery and nearly died, that should be in the dock today for violent disorder. It should be the police responsible for nearly killing Alfie that should be in the dock today. It should not be Brian Simpson who is in the dock tomorrow for taking part in the occupation of the Tory Party HQ at Millbank, just round the corner. It should be the police officers that dragged Jody McIntyre from his wheelchair and inadvertently hit him with the baton. Those are the people that should be in the dock today, not the people that stood up and protested against government cuts. So what I want to do now is I just want to bring a few people forward just to say a few words. And first off, I want to actually call up Brian Simpson.
Hi guys, I just wanted to express my kind of solidarity. It's quite upsetting actually to speak to him when he's right in front of me, because I thought he was going to be in the court now and I could do this big heartfelt message to him. But Alfie means a lot to me, not only for the Defend the Right to Protest movement, because unfortunately he is now the symbol not only of the brutality of the Metropolitan Police, but also the courage of the student movement. He's someone who has made clear from the outset that he is wanting to fight this, and that he is wanting to send a clear message to the government that he is not only against the cuts, and he was very fundamental at his university, at Middlesex University, fighting against those cuts. And that's why he came to such high profile at his own university. But he's a symbol of a movement now that we need to take on the government, because the hypocrisy, the grand hypocrisy at play at the moment with David Cameron and Nick Clegg is that while they go over, the William Haigs go over and meet with the protesters in Tahrir Square in Benghazi, at the same time what they're saying to the protesters, the pro-democracy protesters in Britain, is that we don't have the right to defend our welfare state, to defend the public sector that we all rely on, something that's been attacked. The housing benefits, especially in London, are being halved, and that is going to throw millions of the poorest people in this city and some of the poorest cities in Britain on the scrap heap. And unemployment is going up as well. Why don't we? Why shouldn't we be fighting back against that? We have the right to do that, and now we're being threatened with imprisonment for doing so. And I think, absolutely, if we don't defend the right to protest, then we are absolutely defenceless against the ideological attack that's been waged against all of us. That's why every single one of us needs to be behind Alfie Meadows today. Every single one of us needs to be behind every protester that is facing charges. Because if we start to differentiate between the good protester and the bad protester, if we start to say that there is property damage and there is good protesting, if we start to say what Aaron Porter said within 2 hours of Millbank, and let down the vast majority of the student movement who do feel like we have got to take non-violent direct action, then that is us playing into the hands of David Cameron and Nick Clegg, because they want to divide this movement by saying that there is good and bad protesters. There is only one type of protester, and that's the protester that stands up and takes direct action against what ATC see to be regressive means to govern a country. So I would say to you that we have to stand behind people like Alfie. I would hope that you would come down tomorrow as well. There are buses coming down from Glasgow tomorrow to defend myself and to defend the protesters that will be up in court tomorrow. So I would urge you all to come down tomorrow, and we need to stay here for as long as possible until Alfie comes out of the court. But please show solidarity today and tomorrow and on the 4th of July, because if the Fortnum and Mason protesters, if the Millbank occupiers, if those who chose to occupy the Trafalgar Square, if they go down, then the anti-austerity movement goes down with it. Because if they're able to take down trade unionists like myself, I'm looking at 3 years in jail for being on a megaphone, for shouting at police officers, for apparently being in an illegal occupation. If I'm looking at 3 years for that, then anybody in the next few years who wants to take direct action against this government will be looking at a prison sentence. So if we go down, we all go down. So we need to make sure of that. But thanks very much for listening. Please come along tomorrow as well.
We know that there's another hearing taking place this week, which is the police officer that we all saw in the video pushing Ian Tomlinson to the ground that resulted in his death. We also know that the police lied through their teeth about that. They said that he was ill and the protesters were trying to prevent them helping him. So we know that we're dealing with a police force that is prepared to use deadly violence against protesters and then lie through their teeth about what they've done. Well, the protesters who are going through the courts, the dozens and dozens of protesters, have been fighting and protesting on behalf of everybody, and there's a moral panic that was whipped up after the November the 10th protests in Millbank that really said windows are more important than students' education, that the police van on Whitehall was more important than the students who were being deprived their EMA or having their tuition fees trebled. Well, there's a slogan in Spain over the last few weeks that says violence is 600 euros a month. In other words, violence is poverty. Violence is the cuts that they're carrying out to the health service, to the education system. Violence is taking books away from children so they're not going to be able to have access to the education that all of us have benefited from. So, Hannah's right. UCU voted unanimously to show solidarity with the protesters and support the Defend the Right to Protest campaign. But UCU, the Lecturers Union, has also voted to call on the TUC to organise a general strike. We're all going to be out supporting people in NUT, in PCS, in UCU who are taking strike action on the 30th of June. We see this as a stepping stone to mass action in the autumn because we need a general strike to bring an end to these cuts. But the government is going to try and curtail the right to strike as well. So when Anna Kenny of the GMB union says we will need civil disobedience to defend the right to strike, we know that we're in a major battle and that defending our right to oppose these cuts is absolutely central to that. So when Alfie Meadows and Jody McIntyre and Brian Simpson go into these hearings today, they're not just defending themselves, they are acting on behalf of all of us to defend our right to protest, to defend our right to defend our services, to defend our education and our health service. And in that sense, we are all Alfie Meadows, we are all Jody McIntyre, we're all Brian Simpson, and we stand together with them, and we'll continue to fight against this government and against the police force whose role is to preserve inequality and to preserve the role of this government which is attacking the majority of the population of this country.
Over the last couple of months, between November and December, students were continuously asked what would they do if they were the police? What would they have done in their situation? And what we were saying all the time around was, if we were the police, we would be putting the bankers into prison who are avoiding the tax. We would be putting the politicians into jail who have been frauding their expenses over the last 2 years. And it is in that sense that today we're standing here and saying that these students who stood up to the Tory coalition, that these students who put the resistance onto the agenda in Britain are not the real criminals. The real criminals are sitting in the House of Parliament. They're sitting in the London down the road on Victoria on this movement. This attack is an attack to deter the movement from coming out on the street. And why are the Tories so nasty and using violent methods and trying to lock up 16, 15 and 18 years old? It's because they're scared. And if a 15-year-old can put this coalition onto the brink of collapse, what do they think will come when DMB goes on strike? What do they think is if 4 public sector unions will be going on strike on June 30th? That will really scare the shit out of them. And so what we're saying today is that the defending the right to protest goes hand in hand with fighting against austerity. It goes hand in hand with fighting against the injustices of the system. And we have a hypocrisy at the hand. And we might say over and over and time again is that this government supports rebels in Benghazi who have taken up arms against the vicious government. That they're supporting the revolutionaries in Tahrir Square, and at the same time they're clobbering the heads of people like Alfie Meadows. And we need to say it, that today we're all Alfie Meadows, today we're all the people, we're Gas Evans who's going up, we're all those people who are going up for violent disorder. This could have been anyone, and we're complicit in the occupation of Fortnum and Masons, we're complicit in the occupation of Millbank Tower, we're complicit in the June 30th strikes, and we will stand with each and every single person defying and resisting against this coalition government.